So in this tutorial, we're going to be looking at Lunchbox a little bit more closely. If you go to Food for Rhino, you'll find Lunchbox for download, and you can download the latest version. And when you go to install it, you can either download the installer or you can go to your special folders, components folder, and drag in Lunchbox into this libraries folder. Once you do that, you should restart Rhino and Grasshopper and reopen it, and you should be ready to go. So you'll see under the Lunchbox tab a bunch of new options which are quite useful, and some of them are a little bit we will end up not using for this class. Like this, under this math drop down, there's a good amount of unique surfaces and shapes that you can generate, and they're worth exploring just to see what you can actually make. But for the most part, we won't be using those as an example for this. So what we will be using mostly is under the Panels tool or tab. And in this drop down, you'll have a variety of different panelization components, each of which operates slightly differently, and we'll go over these. Also under the Structures drop down, you see a lot of really quick and useful ways of creating geometry or structural like volumes. So if I take this surface component, which I have here, and here's a definition that we worked on in a previous tutorial, and I'm going to turn that off just so that we can see what's going on. I'm going to drag this loft into the surface input here, and you can see what it did is it created lines coming out, which I can use to then pipe or turn into, I can actually bring these into Revit as structural components. I have to close that and open it and see. They're actually really tiny pipes, you can see there, which is a little bit not what I would want, but you get the idea. Other useful ones, space truss. These are the really cool ones because they usually, I'm sorry, I shouldn't feed my surface in there, not those lines. Delete that. And you can see that this structure is actually doesn't have much depth because it's so big. So I'm going to change my truss depth. It says it's 5. I'm going to make a slider. 5 is the lower end, 10 as the default, and 30 as the large or the maximum of the range. Put that in there. You can see a little bit of change. It looks like I'm going to need a lot more on my slider here. Even more than that. Let's make 1,000. 230. There you go. So you can see then there's a kind of a space frame that creates, which is pretty cool. I'm going to hit insert and select last. I'm going to move that over there, and you can see the structure that creates. So it's a space frame. Okay. And then under the utilities drop down, this is the only place that you find a patch surface component, which is actually really useful in some cases where you just have a bunch of geometry, in this case edge curves, that you want to just create a quick and dirty surface. If you ever use patch in Rhino, it's a really useful way to close up a surface into a solid. And you have a rebuild surface here. It's also very useful for increasing or decreasing the resolution of a surface. But I'm gonna delete these for now. And then lastly, just before we move on and take a more close look at panels, you'll see the workflow drop down here, which is a set of components that allows you to read and write through Excel to launch outside applications, and I can put essentially any application executable in there. And also bake objects. You can toggle a bake button on, which is really great if you are, for example, outputting some sort of geometry that you then need to export in Rhino to a specific file format. Okay, so what we're going to do is we'll eventually try to export something through Hummingbird into Revit, but first we're going to go through some of these different panel types. So I'm going to just lay them out here. Diamond panels, hexagons, random quads, skewed quads. I'll just put them out here, but we won't have to talk about all of them because some of them are kind of repetitive. Staggered quads, and some triangle. Let's just actually just do one quad, one triangle, and a hexagon. Actually, let's do regular quad panels. There we go. Diamond, quad, hexagon, triangle. Alright, so let's just take this surface. Let's do a move. We're going to make an example of each one of these. So we're going to move each one by a certain amount. Let's move it in the X direction. There. And this factor is going to need to be something large. 500. 5,000. 25,000 looks like. Okay. So let's do that for each. So what I'm doing is I'm just feeding the previous transformation into the next one and into the next one. I could do this also by creating a series, but what I want to do is then feed each one of these also into one of those Lunchbox panelization components. So now you see, so there's our original surface. Here's the diamond panels there. You can see how it's arranged or oriented on that surface. Here's our hexagon panels, which also gives you the points and the centers. This one does not split up the different panel types where diamond panels does. It gives you the actual four-sided panels versus the triangular panels. Quad panels, and this triangular panel, which is you can see how they're oriented. There's different types of triangular panels. Alright, so each one of these, let's look at what's coming out. So each one is, this one's a untrimmed surface, this one is untrimmed surface. These are polylines, these are the hexagons, and that has to do with the fact that the hexagons aren't as easily output in a untrimmed surface, or you can't output it in an untrimmed surface, and outputting it as a trimmed surface is a little bit tricky because each hexagon has a kind of non-planar geometry. And we'll figure out a way to filter these in a second. And the quad panels are pretty straightforward. Each one's a surface, and same thing with the triangles here. So let's do something. Let's try to get all the corner points of these three, the diamond, the quads, and the triangles, so that we could, if we wanted to, send them out through Hummingbird. So I'm going to take these three, which is a surface points component, a cull duplicates component, and a simplified tree component. And what this does is it takes a surface, gives you the corner points, removes any duplicates if there are any, and then simplifies the branch structure so that it can go through Hummingbird without any issues. And we talked about that in the previous Hummingbird video, a little bit more about why that's necessary. So won't have to go over it again. So I'm going to take these diamond panels here, and if I take a look at what's happening, I can hover over my points. You can see that there's 164 values in a list of 41 lists, each with 4 corner points, and the duplicates, there weren't any, so you end up having a nice list of 4 corner points for each panel here. If I look over here, that's what's right here. Turn these on. You can see my corner points. Alright. Whoops. Alright. Oops. Call. There we go. So we can do this for our triangular panels coming out of the diamond panels component. I'm going to move these down, put that in there, put this in here. Great. So these are all ready to go. Although, if I look here, I should probably do the leave one. Great. Leave one means that if it finds 2, it will remove 1. If you cull all, it'll remove both remaining both duplicates. Okay. So these would be ready to go. I would just plug them into my adaptive components here, which actually, let's make files for each one of these. So I'm going to feed this into here to my points input. I'm going to line these up. And I'm going to change the name of the CSV file here, actually the one up here, to diamond panel, diamond points, and this is going to use diamond 1, this one triangle 1, and also put this in here for triangle 1 to be used for that one. And I'm going to name this triangle 2 points. In that case, I'll also name this one triangle 1. And then I will put the points coming out of my quads there. And I'm going to change the name here to quad points. And I will use a quad 1 family. I'll make one. So I need to make a diamond 1 family and a quad 1 family. And if I push this button, which I just did, now let's see where that is. There, here you can see all of my CSV files which just got written. Perfect. Okay. So now let's go into Revit. I'm going to open up this family here. It's called Family 2, but I'm going to resave it. Okay. So I'm going to save as family, name this quad 1, save. I'm going to load this. I'm going to create a new project file. Actually open. New project file. None. Imperial. I'm going to load this into my new project file. Also going to open triangle 1. Define this. There we go. I'm also going to load this into project. And I'm going to go back to my quad. Save this as diamond 1. Load it into my project. Alright, so if I go into my families, I'll see in generic models, quad, diamond, triangle. So that's perfect. That's what I want. And I'm going to go to my three-dimensional view. And then I'm going to go back here. I already pressed this button, so that's ready. Now I'm going to switch back to Revit, go to my add-ins, and go to my model builder. Go to create elements from file. I'm going to use that same file directory. Teaching spring. There we go. Now I have all my CSV files here. So I'm going to start with diamond points, and I will select my diamond panel and process it. So it should successfully place all 42 panels. Great. I'm going to do my triangle 1. Actually, I'm going to close this. Now you can see those panels there, just the interior portions of it. Now let's go to our model builder again and go to create from file. Looks like we got to go back. Didn't save that location. Okay, let's do triangle points 1. Triangle. Process it. Looks like there was an error. Triangle points 2. Okay. Let's try triangle points 1 again. We could try to find out what that error was. But before we do that, let's do quad points. So there might be multiple adaptive components or other families that you'd be pushing in during this process, but the process is the same. And pushing in these different panel types is just a quick example of that. Okay, I'll close that. If I zoom out, there we go. So here's the triangle panels, pure triangle panels. This is the quad panels. And the diamond panels. So we have to find out what happened with this one. And it might be back here, I suspect. Yes, that's exactly it. So if I look at my cull points, it's culling all of the duplicates. So what happens is 4 points come in and only 2 points come out because it's deleting the duplicate that it found, deleting both duplicates. So if I right click on it and go to leave one, and now if I look at it, it leaves one of those duplicates, so now there's 3 corner points. So if I hit this button again, and go back to Revit, and I take that same CSV file, should be able to load it in without any problem. Process it. There we go. So we'll fill in the rest of those corners. Perfect. So there you go. So you have our diamond panels with 2 different types, 4-sided, 3-sided, or quads, and pure triangle panels. Now the only thing left is the hexagons, and we'll go over that in the next tutorial video, where we'll filter around different sized panel types, some ranging from 6-sided to 5-sided to 4-sided.